Just want to see if I am live. Yeah, there we go. I'm live. Okay, welcome. Today, we're going to explore something that I've been writing about recently, and it needs to be said. The thought is not the origin. And if you've been trying to create your life through thoughts, feelings, intentions, mindset, frequency, nervous system regulation, or becoming a better energetic match or frequency match, you may have been working after the first movement has already happened. I'm Judy Vee, founder of the Codex System. The Codex System is a structural model for human function and behavior. And today, I'm going to dismantle one of the most repeated myths in spirituality, self-development, and manifestation. That your thoughts, feelings, and intentions are the mechanism creating your reality. On the face of it, yes, some truth there. But as a mechanism, no, not at all, and in no way, shape, or form. Because by the time you are thinking the thought, having the feeling, or even setting the intention, something has already happened. Something has already taken authority. And once you see that, the whole model changes. Everything changes. Because the thought may not be creation. The way I see it, it is the evidence. It's the evidence of what created the creation. The feeling may not be truth. It may be the output of what organized the feeling. The same with the intention may not be sovereign. It may be mimic, wearing the language of the intention or the desire. So the question is not only what am I thinking, or what am I feeling, or what am I intending? The real question that changes everything is what was already in motion before any of that happened. And this is where the mistake is made. Thought, feeling, intention, energy, regulation are all being treated as origin. When in actual fact, they are already downstream. So bear with me. If you misplace the origin, you misplace the work. And this is why people can spend years changing the thoughts, regulating the body, refining your intention, the favorite, raising your frequency, understanding the pattern, rewiring the brain, understanding the firing the neurons, but still find the same life repeating underneath it over and over again for years. Because the work is happening after the thing that you're trying to change has already happened. So, to be very clear and transparent, I'm not here to motivate, coach, inspire. That's not in my realm, not what I do. I'm not here to show you how to have better thoughts. I'm going to show you why the thought, why the work is happening too late. Look what happens in your actual life. And I'm not conceptually, but in real time, in the moment. You wake up in the morning. You may be clear. You've done the work. You've had the breakthrough. You've regulated the nervous system, which is the latest all-time favorite. You know what the pattern is. You know what you are not going to do again. And then a couple of hours later, something happens and the pressure point arrives. It might be a message that's come through that you need to answer or commit to or decide on. Or it might be something around the money you said you wanted. Or something around a conversation you've been avoiding. Or something around visibility that your work has asked for, but there's resistance. Or the decision that should actually be very straightforward and very simple. And something happens before you have time to become the person who knows better. This is the moment I'm talking about. Because most people are not repeating patterns because they have no awareness. This is key, this is important. Many people I work with are deeply aware. They can describe the pattern with such accuracy and such precision. They can actually tell me where it started, what they believe about it, what wound it connects to, what their nervous system typically does, and also the story they've built around it. And most often, the explanation is not wrong, it's just not early enough. It's after the shot's been fired. You can understand why money creates contraction, but yet still contract when it gets close. You can understand why visibility feels loaded and still disappear when attention rises. You can understand why intimacy, for example, brings defense or bracing or awareness, alertness, but still defend when love is available. You can understand why your body braces and still yet brace before the mind is finished explaining anything. And this is the part most people are not being shown. This is the part that is not being discussed. And this is the part that is being completely and totally and utterly ignored. People are being taught to refine the explanation, to create more awareness, to develop more language, more regulation, more intention, more meaning, more seeking, more healing. But in the actual moment, underneath the explanation, something else still chooses. That's the location. We have been taught to work at the wrong location, at the wrong point. Because the real test is not what you think when you're calm, it's what happens when the thing gets close, when money becomes real, when the person comes closer, when the offer needs to be named if you're an entrepreneur, when the life you say you want is no longer theoretical. That is where the old statements begin to show their weakness. I put it to you that your thoughts create your reality. Sounds powerful. But if the thought is already distorted, what is it actually creating? Set the intention. Sounds powerful. But if the intention is already shaped by the same structure that delays the very life you say you want, what is it actually directing? The same goes for everything is energy. Yeah, sounds powerful. Sounds great. Sounds enlightened. But if no one can read what has actually taken authority, what exactly is being trusted about that energy or the frequency? That is why I am not interested in giving people another explanation of the pattern. Because the explanation is usually already there. There's no shortage of explanation. But what has not been located is the place it actually begins. I put it to you, and this is possibly the most important and the most devastating aspect of the whole thing, is that the cost of that is not theoretical. It becomes a life organized around managing what was never correctly read. I want to speak about that for a few minutes, the cost. Because the cost is not only that a pattern repeats itself over and over again. The deeper cost is what you start believing about yourself because it repeats. I've spoken about this several times on Collapse broadcasts and lives over the past few months. Because what happens is people start to feel and think that they did not heal enough, that they're not good enough, that they're not regulated enough, that they're still blocked, that they still have money blocks. That's the craziest thing on the planet, but anyway. That they think they're not aligned, that they are wrong. There's something wrong with them. That's the part that is the most devastating. They think that there's another hidden defect to find. And that is where the model becomes, or the old model, or the lie, the myth, becomes expensive. Because someone calls it a money block. It has nothing to do with the money. But money may only be where the contraction becomes visible. It's got nothing to do with the money. Someone calls it a visibility issue, but visibility may only be where the exposure shows. Or you might call it fear, okay, another common one. But fear may be the alarm after defense has already been selected. And this is how the years go by. Not in any obvious collapse, but in quiet management, day after day after day. More language, more practice, more meaning, more effort, but the same underlying authority. And that is the cost of mislocating the work. People spend money on better explanations of the same thing. They lose trust in themselves because every repetition starts to feel like evidence against them. The body keeps carrying what has never been read correctly. And this is the distortion around age and decaying comes in. And life becomes something to prepare for, to regulate around, to interpret, to refine, to delay, to explain, to manage, instead of life. Life becomes preparing for life, managing life, instead of living life. And I just want to make something very clear. The old model, as I call it, the old way, does not survive because it never helps. It survives because it helps enough to stay believable. Think about it yourself. You've experienced it. You've done the work. You've addressed the thought, feeling, emotion, intention, the regulation, the wound, the whole thing. You've experienced a state change. Your thoughts may have softened. Your feelings have released. You've done the breath. You've had the tears. And you get a window of movement. You experience the release, the relief, the sense of freedom in the moment from the breakthrough. But then consequence enters. The money gets close. The decision has a cost. The visibility becomes real. And then the same authority takes over again. So you go back into the work. You go back into looking for another freaking wound, another block, another belief, another capacity issue, another reason why you're not ready yet. This is one of the most damaging things the self-development industry has done. It trained intelligent people to treat themselves like crime scenes. Every delay becomes a wound. Every contraction becomes a block. Every failed output becomes proof that something else must be wrong inside them. That's a lie. That is wrong. That is false. And while they are searching for the next internal flaw, the same structure keeps on running. And that is why this conversation today, what my work is, what I do, what I speak about, write about, talk about, this conversation is not semantic. I'm not debating whether thoughts matter. Of course they matter. Feelings matter. Intentions matter. Energy matters. Frequency matters, of course. That's not what I'm not saying they don't matter. The question is where they sit in the sequence. That matters. If they are downstream, building freedom around them keeps you late. late to the place where something has already taken authority. And the cost of being late is not only repetition, it's a life spent managing repetition with better language. And at some point, more awareness around the same output stops being liberation. And it just starts becoming maintenance. And when maintenance is mistaken for freedom, you can spend decades inside a model that never reaches the place where the output is actually being generated. So we have to ask the question, most of the market, if not all of the market, will not ask, will not say. If thought, feeling, and intention are the mechanism, why have they failed to end so many repeated lives? It's a fair question. I want to dive a little bit deeper and look at the old model. Maybe let's take it apart carefully. Because for some people listening in to this live now or watching the replay, a part of you, understandably, may find yourself defending the idea your thoughts create your reality. Because it's so familiar. It's so familiar that most people no longer hear what it assumes. It is so familiar, and so many people are using it for hooks, for leads into all sorts of further discussion of the same thing. People are no longer hearing what is lying beyond it. What does it assume? It assumes thought is close enough to origin to be treated as causal. But if thought is already downstream, the assumption collapses. Can you see that? A thought can influence, it can direct attention, organize perception, rehearse an outcome, even open possibility. But none of that proves it is the originating layer or the origin, because influence is not origin. The thought may be the mind's report of what has already moved, not the command creating it. That's why it is downstream. That's why it is not origin. And this is where the self-development world has been too loose. It took a partial truth and treated it as the whole mechanism. The very same thing with intention. People are told to set the intention, make it clear, feel it, even rehearse it. Feel it, declare it, live from it, live from the future self. I don't want to be living from the future self if my current self is distorted. But intention is not automatically sovereign. An intention can be clean, totally. It can be absolutely clean, and it can be extraordinarily clear It can also be pressure, compensation, control. It could be mimic using the language of desire. So when I say your intentions are too late, I'm not saying your intention has no value. I'm saying the intention is not early enough to be trusted as origin. Can you see the difference? The better question here is not only what is my intention, it is what is this intention coming from? And that is a gazillion miles away from what is my intention. Because I can tell you for fact, I've been studying, researching, observing, working on this for over 2 decades. And I can tell you with absolute undeniable conviction that people intend success from threat, visibility from proof, love from deficit. That I've seen over and over again. Wealth from contraction, again, I have seen over and over and over again. And then wonder why the result does not stabilize. The intention sounded clear, but what sat underneath it was not. Then the old adage, everything is energy. Yeah, everything is energy. That part is correct. But it doesn't tell you that phrase, that cliche. It's a cliche in the way it is used. The actual phrase itself is harmless, it's true. But that sentence, everything is energy, does not tell you what is rooting. There's energy and there's energy. It does not tell you whether what is moving is clean signal, or distortion, or regulation, or mimic, or fear, or pressure, defense, or control, or even borrowed authority. That's a big one. So everything is energy becomes a vast statement with absolutely no basis, no precision. And that lack of precision is very expensive. Because everything is energy sounds powerful until no one can tell what kind of energy has taken authority. Intensity can be mistaken for truth. I see it all the time. Intensity not only can be, but is more often mistaken for truth. Expansion is often mistaken for alignment. Calm is mistaken for freedom. Avoidance can call itself surrender. Fear can sound intuitive. Without classification, energy becomes a beautiful word for confusion. Now let's look at regulation. I don't know, for some reason, nervous system regulation right now is the buzzword. It too will pass. Regulation it matters because it has become almost untouchable right now. Now more than ever. People are being told to regulate first, feel safe first, build capacity first, resource first. Like, really? This body, this being is already completely resourced, has complete capacity. Sometimes, yes, the body may need to come out of intensity before anything can be seen clearly. Got it. Totally. In the moment. But not as a way of life. Not as a coping or managing technique. Regulation is not the same as correction. Regulation may manage the response, great, in the moment, but it does not prove the route has changed. Change the route, regulation is no longer required, except occasionally you might need a bit of take a breath of regulation if somebody has just jumped through red lights while you're driving. Appropriate, point in time, not as a way of life. Not as a way of managing your experience and existence of life. Someone can breathe, settle, track sensation, return to the body, feel calmer, but yet still repeat the same thing when life applies pressure. So regulation becomes the place people keep returning to while the source remains unread. Regulation becomes management. It becomes a way of life. It becomes a life preparing for life. And the thing is that management can look very responsible. And this is why it is hard to question. The same goes for awareness. Awareness is literally being treated like the crown jewel. You see the pattern, name the pattern, bring it into consciousness, understand where it comes from or it came from. But if awareness were the mechanism, oh boy, if awareness were the mechanism, awareness would have ended more than it has. People are more aware today than ever before. People are more trauma informed than the history of mankind. People are more emotionally literate, somatically educated, spiritually fluent, but yet still repeating. So the conclusion is unavoidable. Awareness may reveal the pattern. Insight may explain what happened. Understanding may, in some cases at least, remove shame. But none of that proves the thing that has ended at source. None of it proves the thing has ended. The distortion, the mimic, the whatever it might be, has ended at source. And this is where the old model, the dominant model, loses authority. And I want to reiterate, it is not because what it says is false. It just starts too late and then calls itself origin. That is the error. Makes sense? So thoughts may be late, intention may be late, feeling may already be after the fact. Energy without classification is too vague. Regulation may be management. Awareness may be description. So now the question has to change. It's no longer how to think better or intend harder or regulate enough to move. What we are wise now to look at, to question, what has authority before thought appears? What is organizing the behavior before the person has a language for it? That is the question the old model does not answer cleanly. And that is where my work begins. Not with a better interpretation of the pattern. Most people already have one. They can tell me what happens. They can tell me where it started, what it feels like. They can tell me what they think it means, as I've already said, but that is not where I begin. I read the root producing the output before it becomes visible through the Codex System. I read that generating root because Codex names and classifies the architecture of that root. Signal routing is the mechanism because here's the thing. Behavior is not primarily psychological. Behavior is generated through routing before it becomes visible as thought, emotion, identity, action, or repeated pattern. So the thought is downstream. The feeling is already after the fact. The intention is not early enough. The nervous system response may be where it becomes visible. The behavior may be the final expression. And when people try and create freedom from those layers, they're already too late. And that is why the thought is not the origin. Because think about it. A person says, I want money, or I want more money, or I want wealth. That thought, the thought is clear. The desire is clear. The intention is clean. Of course it is. Who doesn't? But when money gets close, the body roots contraction, delay, mistrust, overmanagement, or plain ordinary rejection. So what created the result? The thought? Or what took authority when consequence arrived? That is what I read. A person might say, I'm ready to be visible in my business or for relationships. But attention lands and something in that moment disappears. They do not need another visibility identity, trust me. They need what sits underneath visibility red. A person says, I know what I want, but I'm not moving. That's not a clarity problem. Movement may be held hostage until every consequence is managed. That's not clarity, that's control. And that is why surface language is unreliable. Because two people can say the same sentence and be moving from completely different architecture. Two people can set the same intention and only one of them is moving from clean signal. So I don't take the statement at face value. I read what has authority before the statement appears. Not the hidden wound, not the subconscious block, not another defect inside the person, but the root. What has already organized before the thought, feeling, intention, state, or behavior appears. That's the place that I was going to say most models miss, but I would say all models miss. They work with what has happened, or they work with what has appeared. I read what is producing it. And that is why people that is why people who have done years of work can still need their root read, because that has not been identified and cleared. Because they may have been working after the first movement had already happened. So, not rocket science to see that the same thing is going to keep happening if the root remains the same. I'm not saying this theoretically. This is what I keep seeing in the field. People arrive with the explanation already built. They know the pattern, they know the story, the belief, the nervous system response, and what they think it means. And as I've said already, often their explanation is not wrong, it's just not early enough. And that is the repeated pattern. I've been asked so many times, gazillion times over the years, how have I created the life that I have? How do I understand human function and human behavior the way I do? How is it that I am so clear about this? And how is it that I've created what I've created in spite of the first 20 odd years of my life being the most obscenely oppressive, abusive, torturous, violent existence of isolation from humanity, where I had to escape in the middle of the night, unsocialized? What was it about my experience that did not break me, that I didn't spend a lifetime of healing, regulation? Because from enduring that time, I experienced it, I saw it. When your root is clear, when you are rooting clear signal, nothing. Actually, funny enough, we're actually having an earthquake here. Can you feel that, Tony? There's a minor tremor. Anyway, that's the first time I've ever experienced that in Mexico. Anyway, as I was saying, how was it that oh yes, where I was during that time, I saw it. I could see where the truth was. And when I saw it, my experience of that time shifted so dramatically, so completely, that it changed the trajectory of my life completely after I escaped. Everything changes. When you see it from this perspective, when you work at the root, clear the root. Insight can increase and the same output remains, and it will forever remain. Regulation can improve and the same authority can still take over under pressure, and it will always, no matter what work you do downstream. The intention can be very clear, crystal clear, and the body can still root the opposite when that intention, when that desire gets close. That is what made this work structural. Because if this were only thought, changing thought would end more of it. How many thoughts have you changed in your life? And yet, the same pattern repeated. If this was only emotion, processing emotion would end more of it. Think about it. How many emotions have you processed? But the same happens. If this were regulation, calm would prove freedom. But that's not what I keep seeing. I keep seeing people who understand the output without having access to where it is being generated. And the proof pattern has not stayed in one neat category. Because when the generating layer changes, it does not only show up in better feeling or as a better feeling, it can show up in the body, behavior, decision-making, family dynamics, stress, overwhelm, commercial movement, and practical life. The evidence pattern is too broad to keep pretending this is only about thought, mindset, intention, regulation, and emotional interpretation. And that is why I have built Codex the way I have built it. It has been formalized through white papers that I write, evidence architecture, everything I do, everything we do inside the Codex system, inside the cosmic tribe, inside of my work, everything has an evidence architecture. We track outcomes. The only thing we care about is consequence. What changed? Tracking outcomes and repeated field observations. This is a serious body of work pointing to the same structural fact. What appears is downstream of what produced it. And most people bring me the pattern that they can already explain. I read the root producing it, and there's the difference. So what becomes possible when you stop treating the thought as origin and start locating the root? What then becomes possible? I can tell you this, the first thing that ends the first thing that ends is the constant self-diagnosis. You stop turning every repetition into evidence that something else must be wrong inside you. You stop searching for another block every time life does not move. You stop confusing a better state with structural change. Because a state shift can feel powerful and still leave the system or the architecture untouched. A clearer intention can feel clean and still generate from the same place. A regulated body can feel calmer and still obey the same authority when pressure arrives. When the mechanism is seen correctly, energy stops being wasted in the wrong place. It's as simple as that. You're no longer asking, why do I keep doing this, as though another explanation will resolve it. You start asking the more impactful question: what is moving before this becomes thought or feeling or behavior or my life? That question changes the entire location of the work. Your life is not being created by the thought. It is being shaped by what has authority before the thought appears. Because the point of intervention changes. If what appears downstream, working harder on what appears will keep costing you. If the source is earlier, that source has to be read and cleared. And this is where freedom begins to become structural rather than conceptual. Not a better idea about yourself, not a more spiritual explanation, not a stronger intention layered over the same root, but a different location. And once the location changes, the old work cannot hold the same authority, because you can see what it is actually doing. It may have helped you understand, it may have helped you regulate in the moment, it may have helped you describe. But if the same structure stayed intact, it was always going to find another way to appear. Same but different. Different but same. But that's why the next step is not another practice. So let's bring it back to the beginning, to where we started almost an hour ago. You can think the thought, feel the feeling, set the intention, understand the pattern, and still repeat the same thing. That's where we started. And what that shows is simple. The issue is not simply thought, feeling, intention, awareness, regulation, state, or energy. The issue is where it is being produced. And if that distinction, if that essence is missed, people keep working on what has already appeared. They become more articulate, more skilled at managing the response, more fluent in the language around it, and still the same structure keeps organizing life underneath it. And that is where the years go by. That is where the decades slip past. So if this is named something that is actually active in you, the next route is the Cosmic Tribe. Cosmic Tribe is not a membership. It is not group coaching. It is not a place to collect more language around the pattern. Cosmic Tribe is where repeated outputs are tracked and corrected over time through my live root reading inside the Codex System. Because if the same thing keeps showing up through your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions, your body, money, relationships, visibility, decisions, or timing. The issue is not more information. The source has to be read. The distortion has to be seen at the level it is organizing from and cleared. That is what the Cosmic Tribe is for. And the way into the Cosmic Tribe is through a structural review. A structural review is where I read the source of what keeps repeating before it becomes the life you keep trying to change. Not to give you another explanation of the pattern, not to validate the story, not to turn it into another self-development layer. People in Cosmic Tribe who've worked with me have said they have literally packed away or thrown away every single self-help book they've ever acquired. Because none of that is needed. Codex names and classifies the architecture so the correct next route can be identified. If Cosmic Tribe is the correct route, then the structural review will reveal that. It will reveal that Cosmic Tribe is right for you. Or not. And if it's not, I will tell you. If another access point is cleaner, I will identify that. But the first move is a structural review. So I invite you to apply for a structural review if you want the source of what keeps repeating read accurately. The thought is not the origin. Your life is being shaped by what has authority before the thought appears. And once you see that, the old model cannot hold the same authority. So on that point, I will leave you with, I will put a link into a structural review into the comments. If you have any questions, tag me in the comments and let's explore this. Trust you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again online or in the Cosmic Tribe sometime soon.